Welcome to Wrapped Up, a MMA and combat sports podcast. I'm your host, Frank Mayers, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Allan Galeana.
And we are here to talk about the madness that just went down in the first UFC pay-per-view event of 2025, UFC 311.
It feels good to have another main event, and this one was quite spectacular and quite shocking. I want to transition to, I think, fight of the night. Maybe tied with the Merab Umar fight, but Jiří Procházka versus Jamal Hill was as crazy as I thought it was going to be. I mean, the power that these guys carry is insane. Like, it really does show how much stronger Pereira is than these guys, because Jiří and Jamal were hitting each other with some of the craziest punches I've seen, and they got wobbled. Sometimes they got clipped, but overall, like, the kind of punches they were absorbing just really shows how much above, like, Pereira is. That isn't to take away the win from Procházka. Like, that kind of flash knockout, not even flash knockout, the way in which Jamal, like, crumpled was probably more significant than the one that Pereira hit on him. It was a prominent knockout. It really did show how good Jiří is, and I really liked the head movement that he was trying to incorporate. Like, he was so awkward to fight. It looked strange. He was jumping up, faking knees to the head, and then, like, throwing, like, a cross, and then, like, just head movement, like, out of the way for Jamal. That isn't to say that he didn't get clipped, but it was quite impressive. And with Jamal losing, that, I think, officially wraps up any sort of hope that he has of a rematch with Pereira. But at the same time, Jiří's in such a weird spot where now he's again the number one contender, and he either fights Pereira again for the third time, which based off of that fight, it doesn't seem like it would go in his favor, but, like, I feel like he deserves it. He basically snuffs out anyone below him, and with the kind of performance he had, you gotta give him his rematch. He is always a beast, and he's always fun to watch.
Yeah, 205 is in a very weird place right now. I agree with quite a lot of what you just said. I'm going to circle back to game planning again, right? I think the two biggest question marks I had about Jamal Hill coming into this fight were, one, his chin. We've seen that in the past, Jamal had like a granite chin, ridiculous chin, and then he got cracked and put out by Pereira. So many times we see these guys who have granite chins, the chin gets cracked once, and they can never take a punch again. Well, that didn't turn out to be the case. Clearly, Jamal could take some pretty significant shots. However, the question has to be raised again going forward, because he just got knocked out again, and he took a lot more damage than he did against Pereira. I mean, Hill's face, like, the whole side of his face was just completely swelling up. He got dropped multiple times, and the shots that finally finished him, you really couldn't land a cleaner shot. It was brutal. And so I really don't know that Jamal's going to be able to rely on his chin going forward. And that kind of takes me to my other point, game planning and decision making. This has consistently been Jamal Hill's biggest issue. He's very athletic, even if he doesn't, look as super muscled as some of the other guys. He has a great chin. He's got, showed very solid grappling against Glover, and has good fundamentals on the feet. He's not a world-class striker, but it's been enough to hold him out against guys who aren't like Pereira. But it's decision-making. Back to the Pereira fight. You're fighting Alex Pereira. So how are you going to approach this fight? Are you going to take the smart path to victory, take Pereira down, control him on the ground because you have a ground game advantage? Or are you going to try to stand and trade with the best striker in MMA? And that's exactly what he did, and he got knocked out, because of course he did. And this fight was kind of similar with a Procházka. You're going to have an advantage. Jamal Hill would have an advantage in the wrestling against Procházka. He never shot for a takedown. He never even tried. He was happy to just stand and trade with one of the hardest hitters in the division. The only thing that really saved him in this fight was that Procházka for all of his power, doesn't have the depth of striking that a guy like Pereira does, because, there's an old adage, it's not the hardest shot you take, it's the one you don't see. That's what Pereira does so masterfully, is he sets traps. He gets people to expose themselves, to expect something else, and you can even take this back to, like, Boss Rutan, to, fake your opponent out. They think something else is coming, and they don't see the shot that comes in that actually knocks them out. Procházka, on the other hand, showed, I wouldn't say a great game plan, but an improved game plan for sure. He actually started using head movement and showed somewhat of an improvement in his striking defense. He still did a lot of wild, reckless stuff like the faking jumping knees and all that. Against a guy like Pereira, that's going to get you, like Fedor versus Arlovsky, that's going to get you, caught jumping up in the air and knocked out cold. But he can get away with it with other guys because he is so dangerous. He has so much power, he's so unpredictable, so explosive, and has such a huge reach that you don't dare enter the distance against him. And except Jamal Hill was happy to just wade forward and wear all of these strikes on his face. So now, where are both of these guys in terms of the division, right? Hill, like you said, blew a title shot. He's not going to fight. He's not in a position to fight Pereira again. And Procházka is, again, in that weird place where the only fight that in 205 that really makes sense is the trilogy fight, but I have no reason to believe that a trilogy fight will go differently than either of the two first fights.
I just remembered, I was going to say there's also the chance that Pereira does lose his fight, his championship fight against Ankalaev, which is always a possibility. And if that is the case, I think Jiří has slightly better takedown defense than Pereira. So it might actually go in his favor if Alex loses, but that's a big if. If Alex does the thing that he always does, which is touch you and you die, it would be a pretty scary day to be a Jiří fan. But I think with that, we can talk about the championship fights.
Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov.
Thank you.
I got you.
This fight was crazy. Seeing a Nurmagomedov tire out from a 36-year-old injured Merab was spectacular. When I saw those first two rounds, when I saw Merab getting stuffed off the first round, I thought it was it. I thought it was over. I was like, well, I mean, he had a good run. Basically, if you looked at his last four fights, disgusting wins. O'Malley, Jan, Aldo, Cejudo. That kind of stretch is legendary. And then now he beat Umar and tired him out on an injury that he was healing from. Merab is such a crazy guy. He just didn't stop trying to take down. And at a certain point, he was actually outstriking Umar, who was known for his striking, who was a great wrestler, who had all these basically a jack of all trades and almost a master of all of them. And to see how he managed to continue his pace nonstop, round after round after round, it really does show the kind of commitment that he has to his cardio and the kind of training that he does. The fact that you get this guy who in the casual scene was being seen as a boring wrestler because of how he fought O'Malley, which was, by the way, realistically the smartest way to beat O'Malley, because that guy has crazy power. He clipped Aljamain in one counter, and that was basically it. It was insane. Why would you want to strike that guy in any sense, without trying to mix it up with wrestling? So that was a great fight. Yes, Umar did break his hand, and that does definitely affect your game plan. But at the same time, you can't use that excuse in the middle of a fight. You're right after your fight. I understand that it happens, but guys have come back from worse. And it really does show that Merab is just a different beast in terms of cardio. And if Umar wants another shot, he's going to have to run basically all day to try and keep up, because Merab is a tank. and he just doesn't stop coming, which is crazy because he can get clipped. There are times where he basically gets wobbled off of a punch from like O'Malley, like in the last round, basically almost end of the third round. Like, these things can happen, but because his wrestling and his pace is so much better than everyone else's, he gets to make up for it. And that's what kind of shows you that's like championship material. Same fight, by the way, he now has the most takedowns as a fighter at 92, beating GSP's previous record of 90. And it just kind of shows you that even failing like 23 takedown attempts, he still got his 7 and he still kept going. It is very impressive that this guy has this kind of pace, and he actually outstruck him and significantly outstruck Umar, and it just kind of shows that this guy is a caliber above, and I would really like to see what's next for him in his career.
Yeah, Merab is an interesting fighter. He doesn't really excel technically in any area. Striking wise is okay, but not amazing fundamentals. Frankly, he's kind of pillow-fisted. Like, looking at Umar and looking at Merab's face, it's clear who was doing the more damage, and Umar was doing that with a broken hand. And, 7 takedowns for 23 is not a very high rate of takedowns. But he just keeps coming. He just keeps shooting takedowns. He just keeps striking. And he has the most freakish cardio I've ever seen in any athlete. And he just drowns people in it. And, obviously things did not align well for Umar. He, like you said, he broke his hand in the first round. And against a serious wrestling threat like Merab, you have to be very careful with your kick selection, and that's an issue for Umar because Umar has always been known for his kicks, particularly. Round kicks and some of these other flashy kicks are a big risk for getting your leg grabbed and taken down, and so a lot of his game was nullified, and then at that point, plain and simple, Merab was just able to outwork him. He just completely outworked Umar and got one of the Nurmagomedovs to gas, and out wrestling and out cardioing one of these, AKA Dagestani guys is like, it's a superhuman feat. It's an absolutely superhuman feat. It was wild watching Umar, like, from round 3 on, just start to drown in that fight. I've never seen cardio like Merab. I don't think we'll ever see cardio like it in another athlete. Yeah. What more can you say? It was, even for his detractors, even for people who maybe don't love his fighting style, which I'll be the first to admit, I don't always find his fighting style that entertaining. You can't deny the greatness there. Being able to do that to a guy like Umar is just absurd.
I don't know what's next for that division. It's going to be weird, but I think it's going to be fun. And I finally want to talk about the Islam versus Moicano fight. Shocking that it happened the way it did. I mean, I'm not surprised in terms of how it ended. Submission made sense. First round, though, kind of crazy. First round, like, within the first, 4 minutes is... and the same choke. Back-to-back, same choke. Just shows you Islam's the man. And honestly, I don't think it hurts Moicano's stocks as much as it would normally. I mean, this guy, Islam, there's a reason he's the pound for pound for, there's a reason why he's the pound for pound. He is phenomenal. And honestly, I would maybe give him one more title defense. But after that, I feel like he deserves the right to move up a weight class. I remember hearing that Topuria wanted to fight him. And to me, in my head, it's like, well, Topuria did knock out the greatest, so it makes sense why he would want to go up immediately. But for Islam, it's like, well, why is he going to keep risking his position? He needs to, if he's going to risk anything, he might as well try and risk for greatness and be a double champ. But, I feel like it is it's a real shame that we didn't get to see Arman versus Islam too. And the fact that Arman's now not going to be given a title shot is worrisome for that division. Maybe we'll get Charles versus Islam too. That would be pretty cool. But Islam should take the title shot. He should just move up, try and challenge the guy. be the man. For Moicano, he definitely needs to fight somebody in the top 5. Just give him another chance to climb up. With that, that's basically my view about the situation.
Yeah, once again, I'm going to go back to my favorite word this podcast, game planning. And what we saw from Islam was exactly the kind of game planning we should see. He could have gone the route of Khabib versus Al Iaquinta. He didn't. He didn't make the fight hard for himself. He knew exactly where his advantages were, and he knew that he hasn't had a lot of time to game plan for this opponent. He hasn't been training for this opponent. He just needed to get it done and get it done quick. That's exactly what he did, and he pretty clearly showed that on the feet, on the ground, anywhere in between, he is by far the better fighter. Not to put down Moicano, but I don't think that outcome really shocks a lot of people. But, you have to give hats off to Moicano for actually stepping up and taking the opportunity because, if not him, who else? Very few other people would actually be willing to fight a guy as dangerous as Islam so last minute and be able to effectively save the card. As for Islam, it's a weird place for this division too. The Tsarukyan fight was the fight. That was the fight that made sense. That was the fight that this division really needed. Tsarukyan is now a big question mark. He was injured. There are conspiracy theories about him not making weight. I wouldn't put too much stock into those. But, if he's seriously injured and has a back injury, he may not be the same fighter again. He may be out for a very long period of time. A second Charles fight would be fun, but Islam has kind of dominated that division to a degree where, moving a weight class, taking on a guy like Topuria, I don't hate it. You will not often find me, loving on the whole double champ thing. I think the UFC really kind of watered the whole double champ thing down. But when you have a guy who is so dominant in the division and has just cleared the division out and has, no real challengers left, it does start to make some degree of sense. And frankly, I think there's definitely a risk in that fight. The biggest risk in that fight is Islam, of course, getting knocked out and that decreasing his durability long-term and seriously, starting to shorten his career. Because we have seen Islam, he's been knocked out before, and he has been wobbled by a number of guys who are not that hard of hitters. Topuria, he's got that power. He's extremely technical on the feet. His punching mechanics, his striking mechanics are fantastic, and he's mixed with just natural power. He has that possibility of just catching Islam. Outside of that, though, Islam is a very technical striker. I think Islam is a better rounded striker than Topuria. And, I think overwhelmingly the advantage in that fight would go to Islam. Because if Islam can use a more rounded striking game, including kicks, which Topuria is not a kicker, he's a boxer. And if Islam can use that to close the distance, I think he pretty quickly seals the deal. I think it would be great for him. I think it would be a fun fight. I don't think it would knock Topuria's stock down, at all. Because it's either that or he fights Charles again, waits for Tsarukyan to be ready to fight, and just kind of wait for things to start to reshuffle in the top 5 in that division. So I think that's really all I have to say about that.
And I think with that, we can wrap up today's episode. This was Wrapped Up, a Laveau's MMA and Combat Sports podcast. This was episode 4.
Wrapped Up is a Laveau's news production. All equipment and facilities used to record this podcast have been provided by Laveau's News and De Anza College. Thanks for listening.
See you guys.